Me.
Okay. So tomorrow, today's Wednesday. Tomorrow, Evelyn Dragup's going to be 96.
Oh my.
What?
Wow.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That is a shock for me. I would never have thought that.
Isn't that amazing?
Well, she's amazing then if that's what she's
Yeah.
going to be.
Oh, okay, fine.
Totally with it. So
Yeah.
bright and still,
What did she do in her younger years? What was was she in a
I think she
profession?
was a teacher, elementary school, I believe. Husband was a dentist. They moved up to Southern Connecticut around, I don't remember, was it New Canaan? One of those towns around there, or Darien, one of them over there. And he was an orthodontist, I think. And, I know when she was saying how, there for a while there was some amount of anti-Semitism, but
Hmm.
it was a thing at that point, and it was going around, I guess. When we moved to Massachusetts, my husband went up there before me, starting his job, and I was still in Connecticut. And he said he went out with some guy who, I don't know how he found, a Jewish guy, who was involved with the congregation one town over from where we bought. And he said Jews are spotty in the country, and that just cracked us up because they were spotty. Not too many of them.
Hmm.
And I lived in Connecticut before that, but Evelyn, I'm like 12 years younger, I guess, than Evelyn, and that made a difference, that few years of uh the Jewish population,
Sure, sure.
all that, the same, only different, kind of. Oh,
Well, shall we start?
anytime you want.
We are recording, so that's all taken care of. So let's do the blessing and then move on to better things. Baruch atah Adonai
Adonai,
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam
haolam,
asher kiddushanu b'torah
v'mitzvotav,
v'tzivanu lazot divrei Torah.
Torah.
Blessed are you, Adonai our God,
Ruler of the world.
ruler of the world, who has sanctified us with your commandments, commanded us to engage in the words of the Torah. Amen.
Okay.
Okay, we're on Perik Bet, Holiness of Blood. And Rabbi, will let you start.
Page 108. Thank you, Steve, for everything. Hello, Cy. Hello, Shirley, Minya, Marcia, Nan, and Evelyn.
Yep.
So today we're talking about blood, which is a huge, huge, huge issue. How did the Torah, or how did this part of the Torah see blood? And the answer is very complicated and part of the Tuma and Tahara system. So Tuma and Tahara means holy, purity, and Tuma means impurity. And this doesn't really connect to any modern categories that we're familiar with.
Just a minute.
So,
Just a minute. Layla, Doogie.
every,
Yeah.
so it's a completely different way of looking at certain things. That was
4359.
I'm sorry.
I think it was Joan, or I'm not
That
sure.
was Joan.
Okay, so and hello, Richard. So the question is, what is blood? Now, we know that most of Leviticus was written by the redactors called P, which is standing for priests. So the Kohanim, a group of Kohanim, wrote and redacted most of Leviticus. And that makes sense because most of it deals with sacrifices and the temple and things that the priests were concerned about. Okay, so from our point of view, it's the most technical material, but from the priest's point of view, it was the central work that they were doing. And what role does blood play in that? So we have human blood, we have animal blood, we have, and that's somewhat different. People in the ancient world did not understand the biology of blood the way that we do, but when they got a cut, whether it was a small cut or a massive wound, they could see blood gushing out. So they knew that there was what they saw as red liquid coming out of people. And so the question is, how do you make sense of that religiously? And how do you fit that into this Tuma and Tara system? All right, so that's just a few opening comments. Anybody want to ask any questions or make some brief pointed comments? Okay, Minya.
When I read this, I remembered how my mother used to do this for chicken on Fridays. She would soak the chicken, just like it says, for a half an hour, and then take the tray that she had it on and put it at an angle so that all the blood and whatever could run into the sink. So it was a ritual that hit home with me. It was a long time ago, but I still remember.
And what was your impression upon seeing this?
I just assumed it was a thing that you do when you're Jewish and you don't want to have blood. I knew you couldn't have blood in your food because my mother absolutely killed any red meat. It just, there wasn't a drop of blood. And I always thought that was the only way you ate it. So when I learned that there were things such as medium and medium rare, I was shocked that people would eat food like that had blood running out of it.
And rare, I like my steak rare, but I'm not sure, if I could get that in a kosher restaurant.
No, I doubt it.
Yeah.
Marcia.
Were you, Minu, were you able? I know my father could not eat non-kosher. He couldn't eat pork. Okay. And I'm wondering if you can eat meat that has blood in it now, having been brought up that way.
Oh, absolutely. That's the first thing I changed. I like it either medium rare or rare also.
Yeah.
Well, I
No.
thought
So much,
he could eat bacon. I will say he ate bacon, but
it has more of a taste. When you're eating
Nan.
it in leather, it doesn't taste like anything.
Nan.
Well, in the koshering of food, like in chickens, don't they, once the chicken is killed, don't they, hold it by the legs and let the blood drain?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
because I sort of remember my grandfather doing that, but I think this now explains what my father's mother did about having things well cooked, because my mother, even though my mother's mother had a kosher home, she didn't eat well done meat. And I remember her telling the story of when she went to my father's mother for dinner. She could not eat the meat because it was like leather. And my father always had to take her out afterwards. But my mother said she did get my father to, instead of ordering well done, to a medium where it was cuttable and chewable. But now it makes sense, and I understand why they cooked it. I never knew.
Evelyn.
I remember my mother would never have, of course, broiled meat. However, she made what was called gedempfte flesh, which was braised meat. And the meat was cooked in a liquid so that it didn't get tough. And usually they use the foremost part of the animal, such as the shoulder or something like that, which had a fair amount of collagen and fat in it. And the result was a very tender meat that fell apart. And that was quite palatable, but steaks never showed their face in our house. I mean, there was no such thing. But my mother used to go to the chicken market. She would pick out what she called a pullets, which was a 6 pound older chicken because she wanted to make soup and she also wanted the fat to render out. And I remember as a kid,
Just,
the ovaries
I
were
can't,
still
I can't talk, but
the
is
ovaries
everything
were
okay?
still in there. And so when my mother brought the chicken home, she would drop the little yolks that were still in the ovaries into the soup. And that was considered a delicacy. Also, the chicken feet were considered a delicacy, and you don't hardly see chicken feet these days.
I found them.
Really?
Asiana Market sells containers of them.
Yeah, the
And the
Chinese, yeah,
And the next
Chinese,
time I go, I'm buying a container and I'm going to freeze them in individual packets so that when I make soup, I can have my feet in the soup. Rich don't eat it, but
well, yeah,
Why?
the Orientals consider the feet
Pam, it's delicious.
delicacy. Yeah, yeah. Well, you know,
They want to eat them again.
the old customs have dissipated. They don't exist anymore, except perhaps the Orthodox at any
And I
rate.
used to get the chicken, those unborn chicken eggs when I lived on Long Island. Pathmark used to sell containers of them. There was a law in New York City that in Manhattan you couldn't buy them they couldn't sell them anymore. And my job for Passover was to bring them to the Seder so they could be boiled and put into the soup because all the unmarried women and young girls had to have one of those eggs as a, to wish them luck and fertility and whatever kind of superstition was related to that.
Yeah.
So with Evelyn's comment, that all these customs have now fallen by the wayside, the question is, well, what was the purpose of the custom? In other words, why was blood looked at in a certain way in Jewish tradition? And is that concept of whatever we thought about blood and whatever we're trying to oppose in pagan rituals, is there any importance to that that needs to be preserved from a religious point of view, or is it just a bunch of sort of silly customs that don't matter very much? And that's what we want to look at today. Other comments, Richard and Pam, welcome to both of you coming in late. Richard, thank you for your excellent post-trauma medical care that you've been giving to me every time you see me. I didn't
We'll
know
operate tomorrow.
what.
We'll operate tomorrow.
I thought he was an ear, nose, and throat expert, but it turns out he's an emergency medicine expert. So, but comments about blood, Richard?
You have to unmute, Richard. Richard, you have to
Can't hear
unmute.
you.
Sorry.
I think that that the ancients understood blood in a general sense that without it you die. And I have a question. I was born. I had to change my hearing aid batteries. How do they kosher beef? I mean, what they do now. The slaughterhouses, beef go down a chute, and then they take a large mechanical hammer and hit their head. They get a traumatic concussion that kills them, and the blood just left in there. How do we do that in the Jewish tradition now? How do we
Well,
kosher?
I'm not an expert on shrita, shrita is the Hebrew word for slaughtering, but they have to use a very special knife that has a very sharp edge, and you take the cow and you slit his throat in a particular way. And that certainly at the time was considered to be very humane. A lot of countries, including just Canada this past week, Canada's making restrictions and almost making it impossible to create kosher meat in Canada, which is, so the question is this really a humanitarian thing, or is this just outright anti-Semitism? So Canadian Jews have pointed out that they allow, you know, things that are far more barbaric, like slaughtering whales and things. And so there's a great deal of question what the motivation is. But you would normally take a sharp knife, you would cut the animal's throat, then the animal would die quickly, and then the blood would be drained out. Marcia.
So do the Muslims have similar, the halal, is that a similar situation? And will that affect?
Similar, but their slaughter has not been prohibited in Canada.
Yeah, so this must be controversial then going on.
It's very controversial, certainly in the Jewish community. The Canadian government is also seen as very, very anti-Israel, and so this seems to be part of a broader hostility. Um, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is. But certainly our focus today is not on shechita, but on the blood itself. And Richard made an interesting comment that the ancients may not have understood biology or medicine, but they knew that if you lose too much blood, you die. And so, therefore, blood is the source of life and it's a liquid. And when it comes out, it's red. And this is what they knew. So, therefore, it's very important. And they understood that. Pam or Donna, welcome, Pam and Natalie. Natalie, can you make your picture come on? Okay. Pam or Donna, comment about blood. Donna, any experiences with blood, positive or negative, your own or someone else's or any animal? Let's move from the animal part. We've talked a little bit about cow blood to people blood. Has anyone had exposure with lots of blood? Lots of your blood? I'll tell you, when I fell off the bike and my nose was, there was blood everywhere. It was quite a sight. There's something that makes you very fearful when you see your own blood, just scattered around. I guess it makes you think you could die because blood is supposed to be inside. And once you see it outside and you realize it's yours and it's in copious amounts, even though it wasn't in my case very much, probably, but it looked like a lot. Your natural inclination is to get frightened and to fear for your life. Okay, then, Pam, anything?
No
No
comment?
exposure to blood. You're an engineer, not a doctor. Okay, engineers don't deal with blood unless their building projects fail rather spectacularly, like the Baltimore Bridge. And yes, Marcia.
I went to Bronx Science in New York, and that one of our classes was actually about blood, and we had to it was us sticking ourselves or a lab partner, which you didn't want somebody else sticking you because you didn't know how hard they were going to hit you with that lance. So I kind of got used to that kind of an appearance of blood, and we tested for blood typing and that kind of stuff. And I'm sure Richard has been more than experienced than the rest of us in that situation. But the familiarity makes me less crazed about the whole thing. But I know, and cut yourself with a kitchen knife, and you said, "Oh my God, how bad is this? Do I really have to get stitches or something like that?" So I always have the styptic powder. And David and I went through this the other day when he had a cut, and just letting it clot like that. But I think women have a different familiarity with blood because of menstrual cycles, and so we don't,
Ah,
we see it monthly. So you get used to that. It's a different story. I think men's attitudes are probably different than women's about that.
interesting. Yes. And that was another thing that was very important in Judaism. So, of course, the menstrual cycle was very highly regulated in Judaism. And when a couple were married, they had sex based upon the menstrual cycle. They had to wait till the end of the menstrual cycle and then count another 7 days. And then the woman would go to the mikveh, and then she would be able to resume sex with her husband. And
And
only
can't
then.
be called unclean between those that at that.
Well, I don't like the word unclean. Unclean sounds like you need to take a shower. It's
Right.
really more
What does
of
it actually translate to?
well, tuma v'tahara, the words I used earlier. So purity and impurity, maybe. I mean, you can say unclean. I just wanted to be clear that we're not talking about, dirt that you would shower off.
Right.
Yes, Donna.
I've often wondered why uh, the liver is nothing but basically but blood. And as I understand it, the Jews do not eat blood or as such, but they eat a lot of liver, chicken liver pate, and just liver. But the liver is nothing but blood. So I wonder how
Right.
they correlate this.
Yeah, well, I guess the whole cow had a lot of blood, so I guess steak. If you make a rare steak, it looks very red as well. So I don't think that the rabbis differentiated between the liver and just steak for that reason. In modern times, we eat less liver because we know how high the cholesterol is in it, and also that it has all these poisons which may or may not be so good for you. Um, but um, but um, there's no special prohibition against liver. But if you wanted to avoid blood, you could just do away with cows entirely, which looks so red, any cow meat, and just chicken or fish looks a lot less bloody to me. You know, I don't know, maybe fish blood doesn't look red or something, but you don't. I mean, there's really no fish that you eat except for maybe tuna, where you see anything that looks like blood at all. But then the question comes back, what is blood? How does Judaism see it? Is it a problem in itself? Is what is it? What's important about it? What's the symbolism of it? It's not just symbolism in this case. Blood really represents something, very, very specific, you know. Yeah, Steve.
Well, when I used to go fishing and we would, clean the fish, you definitely see the blood, especially when you cut the head off. So, but yeah, there definitely is blood in the fish.
And what kind of fish was this?
Mostly, pike and sunfish and maybe, I don't know, that's primarily what we caught was pike and sunfish.
Freshwater fish.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is in the ocean near
No,
Kansas
no, no.
City.
This is in the the lakes of Minnesota, upper
Uh,
Minnesota.
okay, let's start reading page 108. Can I have a volunteer?
For our readers.
Okay, Nan Ruben Lieber.
Okay.
The holiness of blood. Jewish tradition forbids the eating of blood. Parshit Sar contains the commandment, and you must not consume any blood, either of bird or of animal, in any of your settlements. This prohibition against eating blood also appears in Leviticus and later in Deuteronomy.
Okay, stop for a second
Okay.
there. So you can see the Torah was put together by different authors and redactors. So you have the same prohibition at least 4 times. You don't need it 4 times, right? But because these were different sources and the redactors edited together. They tried to keep as much of each text as possible. So they weren't cutting that much. So if it was part of a text, they left it in generally. So there's 4 separate psukim where it says basically the same thing. You shall not eat any blood. 3 of them are in Leviticus, and 1 is in Deuteronomy. We know that Deuteronomy came a little bit later. It was in some ways a summary and a retelling of the Torah in a different perspective, but it kept this prohibition against blood for sure. Evelyn.
This reminds me of the fact that the culture in Judaism has discouraged Jews from hunting, because if they hunt an animal and they kill the animal, it's really truly unkosher because it has not been ritually killed. It may have been shot. And so by not being fit to eat, what's the point of hunting then? And so over the millennia, Jews have never really taken to hunting. It's just not our thing as such. And if they do hunt, well, they do fish. For some reason, fishing doesn't have that pejorative connotation that hunting an animal does. And so when we eat fish, we're eating the muscle part of the fish, and there is never any apparent blood in that particular part. Most of it seems to
Yeah,
be.
well, Steve said that when you do catch a fish, there is a lot of blood.
There's a lot of blood in the heart, and there is a specific area where the blood is carried by an artery. But in the muscle part that we tend to eat, which we call a fillet or whatever it is, the fluid in there is not bloody. It isn't the way it is in, let's say, a cow.
Right.
And so whatever fluid there is in the muscle of a fish can be water and saline, but definitely not blood. And so therefore, there doesn't seem to be the same negative attitude towards eating fish as there is in eating red meat.
Now, when I was a student rabbi in Upper Peninsula, Michigan, Steve, have you ever been to Upper Peninsula, Michigan?
Yes, I have.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to establish my credentials as a committed Midwesterner. So when I was a student rabbi up there, I had a family that were dedicated bear hunters.
Mm.
And they used to spend all night, outside in this little like fortified area, waiting for a bear to come by and then shoot them. And this is a highly unusual thing for a Jewish family. But the Upper Peninsula, the people there were not your, typical Boca Raton types. And there was reasons why Jews aren't usually hunters. Can anyone give me a couple of reasons? Nan?
Have no idea.
Sai? Okay, Marcia?
I've got a record from this is Doug Kotler. It says Jews don't camp. Maybe that's it.
So if Jews don't camp, then Jews don't hunt.
Well, you got to have one with the other, I guess.
No,
But there were Jewish cowboys. So
Richard.
We all live in the city. Who hunts in the city?
Well,
I have another thing to say about blood.
in New York, we had plenty of birds that you could shoot. They were all pigeons, but they were birds. Yeah, sorry, Richard.
I have a question to ask. The prohibition against eating blood, and Jehovah's Witnesses take this literally so that they can. And I remember I encountered these patients who needed blood. It was very difficult to do because they would not accept blood products. What is the idea in the Orthodox? Do they allow blood transfusions? That's something I don't know because when a few.
Yes, I believe they do.
Okay, because I don't remember.
I can't tell you exactly the reason.
Okay. I know they even allow pig heart valves, because the idea is that although it's from a pig and it's not kosher, you're not eating it. It's being placed into the heart.
Mhm. Wow, okay. So getting back to my question, why are Jews not hunters? I can think of several reasons, but give me one or two.
Because when the animal is killed, it is not fit to eat for
Oh,
some.
good. Okay, right. So you have to shecht an animal. So is deer kosher?
Mm-mm.
Why?
A cloven
Steve?
hoof.
The,
Steve?
the hoofs, the hoofs, the hoofs are not kosher.
Really?
They have a cloven hoof.
So the
Is that it? It's like a, I
deers don't have a cloven hoof?
Mm-mm.
think they do.
Okay, wait.
Well,
Do
if they
deer
do,
have
they'd be
cloven
kosher.
hooves?
No, they don't.
Oh, I don't think venison is kosher.
It's not kosher.
But why?
It doesn't have the right feet.
Right.
I think it does, though.
I think it's the feet, yeah.
Or
Um,
doesn't chew its
Look at
cud.
rabbit. Rabbit is not considered kosher either. You know, it was a readily available form of food, but it was still not considered kosher as
What's
such.
wrong
it
with the
says here,
rabbit?
according to the chat GPI, the artificial intelligence, and this artificial intelligence is a lot smarter than any of us. Yes, deer have cloven hooves.
See?
Oh,
That's what I
Cloven
thought.
hooves, also known as cleft, divided, or split hooves, are hooves that are split into two toes. This gives the hoof the appearance of two digits or toes, which deer most definitely have. Cloven hooves help deer navigate uneven ground and rocky terrain by providing more balance and stability.
Uh,
However, it
okay.
has made the deer a sworn enemy of the Jews. They added that.
Yeah. Okay.
Evelyn.
I just thought of a reason. Those animals that have cloven feet are grass feeders. They are vegetarians, and there is any animal that eats another animal. Particularly, I'm thinking lions, tigers, vultures. They eat dead meat, and that is not considered healthy and not considered to be kosher.
Okay.
So I think that's where the edict came from. That the animals with cloven feet definitely are grass eaters. There's no question about it, and so they would be considered kosher animals.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just looked it up. You want to know what it says from Chabad.org. It says venison is the meat of deer, which is a kosher species, provided that it was slaughtered, salted, and deveined according to Jewish law, it would be kosher.
Hmm.
In fact, venison is occasionally found at high-end kosher restaurants. However, odds are that you will not find it in the freezer at your local kosher supermarket. So,
Well, when I was a rabbi in Georgia, there was the Owen family, and every time they had me over to dinner, which was frequently, they served me venison. And they knew how to store it and to cook it and prepare it, and it was delicious.
Mm.
You had to be careful because you could get a little bullet in your teeth. You could
Then it
have.
wasn't kosher. If it was shot, it wasn't kosher.
All right, but Evelyn, you're making the exact point. So it's not the animal that's not kosher, it's the way that he gets onto your dinner plate.
Yeah, right.
That's the problem. So if you could simply negotiate with him and say, come here and let us chop your head off, then he would be kosher. The problem is he runs away, and the only way to catch him is to shoot him. And once you shoot him, he's not kosher.
So it's the manner of how he's killed rather than the animal.
Richard.
Okay, we're talking about, the kosher and how we kosher it, and so I looked up challah, because we mentioned that challah in Canada, it hasn't been proscribed, it's still around. Well, it appears that it's the same, they do basically the same thing we do. The animal, they have to use a very sharp instrument to ensure humane slaughter. The animal must be slit at the throat. The animal must not be unconscious. The animal must be hung upside down and allowed to bleed dry. So while the animal is still living, it's bleeding out and it's hung upside down, so it bleeds out. That sounds like it's similar to what we do when we kosher our meat.
So maybe you could look up now or later whether Canada is prohibiting halal meat as well as kosher meat. I do not believe that to be the case because the articles I've seen on it are stressing that this seems to be personally, directed against the Jewish community. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're just not talking about it. So that would be interesting. All right, I'm gonna put it back to Marcia. You want to read the box? Do not
Okay.
eat the blood. Page 108 on the left. Oh, I'm sorry, Nan. Left
Okay.
side in the box.
Do not eat the blood. And if any Israelite or any stranger who resides among them hunts down an animal or bird that may be eaten, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with earth. For the life soul of all flesh is its blood, is its life. Therefore, I say to the Israelite people, you shall not eat of the blood of any flesh, for the life or soul of all flesh is in its blood. So I guess in this they're equating blood to the soul, and that's why they don't want you to eat the blood, because they feel you're eating life, and that's
Very interesting. So the blood is the soul. Interesting. So how many people like that idea? How many people don't like that idea? Why not, Sai?
Well, I mean, they can say anything about relationships. They can say the eyes of the soul or your fingernails of the soul. Why the blood?
Well, because if you have a soul, you're alive. If all the blood comes out of you're not alive, and then
Well, your fingernails are alive, I assume, until you
No.
yeah,
die,
they could cut off, they
or your
could pull out your
toenails.
finger. If
Or
you
what
get
about
caught,
your hair?
Sai, if you get caught by the Russian Secret Service, they could pull out your fingernails.
Well, what I really don't like is the idea that someone makes a statement and everybody has to abide by it when there's really
Okay.
no proof of the statement.
Nobody's saying you have to believe it. No, you can
Well,
believe
if
whatever
you're
you want. You're
orthodox,
very open theologically, Sai. And
I would assume the Orthodox believe it.
not necessarily. Evelyn.
I was just thinking that you're intending to say that blood is the vehicle in which the soul is contained, and yet it is not the soul itself. But by the same token, as Sai says, any part of the body could be considered to contain the soul. And that's a strange concept because we don't tend to think of soul as being part of the living physical entity that we are. The soul is part of us and yet is a nebulous something that is not easily defined, that can't be specified. Oh, this blood is my soul. This blood may be a vehicle that carries my soul along with the rest of my body, but it is not the soul itself. And so I think it's wrong to designate a particular part of one's anatomy as containing the soul. It's not realistic to me.
Rabbi,
Yes, Sai.
the other day I had occasion to watch a program on television called The Resident. It's about somebody in a hospital and all the machinations that go on in the hospital. But what I found that was interesting is there were a great deal of photographs of operations going on in the hospital, and man, there was a lot of blood flowing. So and it so happens the doctor was Jewish. But so how do you relate that to the soul when blood is always flowing when there's some sort of a surgery.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying it's true, but you could see how the ancients might see it that way, right? Did anyone see Apocalypto?
Apocalypse,
No,
Apocalypse Now.
The Mel Gibson
Apocalyptic.
movie. The
Yeah.
Mel Gibson movie about the Aztec or the Inca and the Spanish arrive off the coast of South America, and then this other group takes them captive and is going to sacrifice them to their god. Nobody's seen it.
I
It's
won't
a
watch
great
Mel
movie. I
Gibson.
mean, Mel Gibson's a obviously problematic person, but the movie was really spectacular. But in one scene, I believe that the other tribe takes a warrior, kills him, and then rips out his heart and eats it, because the heart is kind of if blood is the source of life and is maybe seen as the soul, the heart is the source of all the blood, at least as they would see it.
Didn't the Indians do that?
Marcia and then Minya.
Just, it's probably not relevant, but the Catholics have during their services, they drink the blood of Christ and wine.
Right. So they don't drink the saliva of Jesus. They don't drink the eye secretions of Jesus. They drink the blood of Jesus.
Right.
And that, I mean, that has its own theological issues, obviously, like really big ones. But that's beyond the scope of our discussion today. Minya.
I was just going to add that Native Americans also ate the heart of a buffalo after they were slaughtered before they took away all the other parts of it. But the heart was like the first thing that they did.
Okay, for that very reason. Okay, Nan, you want to keep reading?
Sure. The early rabbis who interpreted the Torah's prohibition against eating blood developed a number of methods for slaughtering and removing the blood of animals. The knife used is to be razor sharp and perfectly smooth without any nicks or dents, so as to cause as little suffering to the animal as possible. The blood spilled at the moment of slaughter is to be poured on a bed of dust and to be covered with the dust and buried. After the slaughter, the blood is to be removed from the meat by soaking it for a half hour and by salting it for 1 hour. Then the meat is rinsed and ready for cooking. One may also remove the blood by broiling the meat. Why this unusual attention to blood? Why does Jewish tradition forbid the eating of blood? Most commentators agree that there are 2 reasons for the Torah's prohibitions against eating blood. The first has to do with the common use of blood by pagan cults. In pagan ceremonies, the blood of animals was eaten in the belief that it would provide strength or healing from sickness. At times, such ceremonies also included I'm sort of cut off here. Also included the human blood in hope that it would.
The offering of human blood.
I don't know. I'm sort of cut off here.
It says the offering
Offering of human blood.
All right, in the hope that it would
satisfy
thirsty demons who.
Oh, it was believed. So I'm cut off here. I can't.
Okay, let me read it. I'll read it. I think that somebody was censoring Nan because of the thirsty demons part. They thought it was too much for her to handle. I'm just going back a few lines to the bottom of 108 on the left. In pagan ceremonies, the pagans are the bad guys. The blood of animals was eaten in the belief that it would provide strength or healing from sickness, right, Richard? We know that from modern medicine as well. At times, such ceremonies also included the offering of human blood in hope that it would satisfy thirsty demons who it was believed might cause harm. So this is hard for us in modern religion to
Okay.
gather, but Jews as well as pagans, not just pagans, but Jews. In the Middle Ages, most Jews believed in demons. Lilith was a demon.
Okay, I had to
Early
make my.
Jewish, one more sentence.
Okay.
Early Jewish tradition rejected such ritual practices as dangerous and misleading, but they didn't necessarily reject the idea that demons might want blood.
Okay, I had to make my print smaller. I have the whole page now.
Okay. I was
I,
wondering if I did
think
something
that
wrong
I
when the
think,
scanning.
Anne, that the photocopy machine was trying to
No,
save you.
no, it was because I try to enlarge the print on my Kindle so that it was easier to read, but if I keep it, the original small print, I get the whole
Pam,
column. So
Pam, Pam.
Um, when did we get rid of this idea of demons? You don't hear about that much anymore.
Well, in modern times, but in the Middle Ages, let's say in the 12th, 13th century in Germany, Jews used to hang a little thing over the cribs of their babies to keep demons away from the baby because they had crib death and they thought that demons had come in the middle of the night or during the day and murdered the baby. So they would hang up these Kabbalistic things, including the Kamsa,
Hamza, yeah.
to keep demons away from their little babies.
What was the,
For example, now once you hit modern times in the 1700s, everybody has discovered rationalism. Everything has to be rational. And therefore, Jews and Christians, anybody who wanted to be regarded as modern we got rid of all these magical and mystical and superstitious beliefs. And so then there became more of an emphasis on, God giving the Torah and God being monotheistic and the mitzvot being, a way to be a better person. These were all rational. The stress was exclusively on rationality. And I remember in Georgia when I first offered a course in Kabbalah, one of the old time Reform members came to me, and his great grandparents had been Reform in Georgia. And he said, I don't mind you teaching Kabbalah, that's part of the Jewish tradition, but I resent that we're advertising it publicly and the Christians see that we're teaching Kabbalah because mysticism is not rational and therefore it's bad, but it's part of our tradition, so we would learn about it, but we shouldn't be telling the Christians that we have it. So I said, but Christians have mysticism as well, which is just as weird as ours. And he was shocked. He did not know that Christians had mysticism because, both Jews and Christians hid this for the last 200 or 300 years. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to talk that we and they believed in demons until relatively recently. Yes, Evelyn and then Marcia.
The European people who, before they immigrated here, my mother was born in Minsk, Belarus. And when she grew up, she had certain superstitions, which when she tried to inflict on me, I became infuriated at. And one of them that I remember was when she had to sew a button on my coat because it was loose. She made me put a thread in my mouth. And somehow that superstition meant that my soul would not leave my body as she was stitching the button on. Meshuggah, like you can't believe. And
I remember my grandmother making me take my sweater off before she would, tighten the button with thread. But because if you sewed it on the sweater when the person was wearing it, you were inviting demons to attack the
demons to
person.
come in. Okay.
If
Well,
you took the sweater, so it's a little different, but same concept.
concept. Yeah. And so these superstitions were existing, shall we say, in modern times and probably still do in those less informed populaces. And so it's perpetuated.
Right.
And
So Moses Mendelssohn was the big thinker here, and he was at the 1700s in Berlin telling people, no, Judaism's rational. But in the places where Evelyn's parents and my grandparents came from, in the backwoods of Eastern Europe, even 200 years after Moses Mendelssohn, they're still believing in this, what's called Narishkeit, which is Yiddish for nonsense. Um, but you know, but we don't believe in any of that stuff today, of course. But it's making a comeback because people find that religion that's too rational gets boring, and having a few demons running around gives a little excitement. Minya, and then Marcia, and then Pam, and then Cy.
Well, my parents come from those backwoods of Europe that you're talking about, and I have more superstitions than you could, whatever. I could make a book out of it. But my point is that I am one of those people who still do those things. When my children were little, there was a red ribbon associated with their crib. When I got married, my mother put a red ribbon under my wedding dress. They really believed it, not really as just superstitions. They believed that if you didn't do those things, you left the child or the bride or whatever open to demons. Evil eye will come and you will have bad luck. So rather than taking a chance on bad luck, you just do all those things and then you know that you're safe.
Okay, that sounds fair enough. Marcia.
And if you don't, Minya, you never know because you
That's
don't want
right.
to mess with it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
and then bad
I
luck
was
happens anyway.
yeah, I was thinking about Isaac Bashevis Singer and his Dybbuk's, which
Yeah.
all through his stories, these little demon devils. The Native Americans have Kokapelli over here, and he
Yeah.
was one of their demons. That you see the guy with the flute, on all the pictures around here, and he was a demon that went from village to village and amongst the
But
Indians.
what about this idea that the demons are specifically thirsty for blood? Does that
I
does
don't
that connect in any way,
know.
Pam or Cy or
No, I don't know.
Steve?
Well, they would take your life from you in a sense.
Oh, yeah, but I never heard of one that was bloodthirsty particularly.
Yeah.
Well, there's
Vampire,
an
the concept
expression.
of
Look at
Oh,
that
vampire.
the
expression,
vampires, but those weren't Jewish demons.
bloodthirsty. So the chess player was bloodthirsty. You use that expression all the time, but
The
it
who?
literally means thirsty for blood, right? But that's not necessarily how we use it. You know, the chess player was bloodthirsty and he won all of his
It
contests.
isn't literal.
Right.
Yeah.
But the literal came from somewhere. Okay, back to you, Nan. Can you
But
read
there's
or
more people
Yes,
who wanted to
I
say
can
oh,
read.
who else wanted to talk? Cy,
something.
Pam, Donna, Shirley. No, I guess we answered all the questions.
Gave up.
Or that either that or they're just afraid of the demons who might be watching on
No,
Zoom. Okay, back
Okay.
to you, Dan, if you
Rambam.
agree.
Philosopher and commentator Moses Maimonides discusses the Torah's prohibition against eating blood in his Guide for the Perplexed. He explains that pagans believed that by collecting the blood of animals and placing it in pots and bowls, the spirits would come and dine with them. These spirits would even appear to them in dreams, revealing the future or reward them with good luck. Maimonides argues that the Torah seeks to cure humanity of such idolatry and to do away with such misconceptions. For that reason, it forbids the eating of blood.
Okay, so who can summarize Maimonides' view? Richard Maimonides was a little like you.
Of course, I'm like, basically he's saying, hey, us Jews, we can't eat meat. We can't eat meat that has blood in it because the pagans did, and we want to get rid of the pagan rituals, basically.
Right, exactly. And can you see any influence of him being a doctor as well as a rabbi
Oh,
in
sure.
this
Rationalism.
okay, so
Also,
so
philosophy is everything.
the idea that the pagans would sit down and put blood in bowls, and the spirits would come and they would eat meal together with the blood. This is something Maimonides wants to stop. So sharing a meal of blood with evil spirits, with demons, is not a socially acceptable thing in Maimonides' view. Nan, did you want to say something, and then
Yeah,
Pam?
I got a kick out of the title of his book, The Guide for the Perplexed. It just struck me as amusing. And the picture in my mind of demons sitting at a table while everybody is eating also just sounds, a little far-fetched, but it's a to me, it's like a whimsical imagery.
Pam.
Well, I see Jews eating rare steak all the time. We're not supposed to do that?
That's a good question. I mean,
Well, if you read
let me
the
ask
beginning of it, it's
ChatGPT.
the way you let all the blood drain out. And if there's no blood left in the meat, if you were to cook it, it's going to be
Can
very
Jews
tough.
eat
Yeah.
rare steak?
Well,
If you're kosher, you wouldn't be doing it.
that's what, yeah. And
kosher, you wouldn't eat rare meat.
yeah.
Ask
Not
Dave if
only
he ever
that,
ate red meat,
Prun
rare
has
meat.
nothing to do with how cooked or rare your meat is. So yes, but the actual blood is drained out through salting, but you can cook it very slightly so it would be rare, but it might not have as much blood in it as if you buy it at a non-kosher steakhouse. But you can get
Would be dry.
rare steak in a kosher restaurant. Yes.
Okay. I'll ask Yeshiva boy.
Pam and then Evelyn.
No, I'm saying I'll ask my yeshiva boy how he did it.
yeah. We also tend to think, when we think of steaks, we tend to think of steaks that are actually in the hindquarters, and those would never be considered kosher anyway. It's from the ribs up that the meat is kosher. The lower part of the animal would never be considered kosher, even if it was slaughtered in a kosher fashion.
That's not 100% right. What the problem is in the rear part, which is where the best cuts of meat is, there's what is called in Hebrew gid hanasheh. And this is a sinew, which, remember, when Jacob wrestled the angel, angel hurt Jacob in that sinew. So that sinew is not allowed to be eaten. So therefore, if you say kosherly slaughter a cow, you can take the rear parts of the animal, which are the more expensive steaks, and manually go in and cut out this one sinew, and then the steak is perfectly kosher. The reason you're saying what you're saying, Evelyn, is because kosher butchers do not do that because it's too time intensive.
Yeah.
It's more profitable to simply sell that part of the steak of the animal, which is what the non-kosher butchers really want anyway, so it can get very high prices, and just leave it in, because going in and getting that gidanasha out is very difficult and time intensive, takes a lot of time. So, but if you really want to, you can get kosher sirloin or kosher tenderloin or kosher filet mignon, but it's not that common, but for the reason I just said.
Okay.
Who is next? Sai? Sai.
You have to unmute, Sai.
Unmute.
Unmute.
No.
Can hear us. We don't hear you.
You need to unmute, Sai. unmute the,
Doesn't,
Do you?
well, you want to come back to side?
push that
Okay.
T so we can hear you.
There's no way that we can unmute him.
No,
There is on the buttons there, it says ask to unmute.
I know, but that's it. That's all there is.
And I click it,
I can't
nothing
do it.
happens.
There he is. He's up.
Oh, there he
There we
is.
go.
Can you hear me now?
Yay, rap.
Yes.
Yay,
Okay,
Side.
what I was saying is that we constantly read about food and our relationships to food. But what about drink? We never hear anything about that. Is there any particular reason?
Drink, meaning like what?
Like alcohol of all sorts and so forth?
Well, because it's allowed.
Wine? Yeah, but wine, that's my point.
Well, wine had the same problem that wine has to be kosher, meaning under rabbinical supervision, not because they're afraid you're going to drop a little piece of pork in it, but because they're afraid that the wine may first be used in pagan rituals. So when I go to Total Wine, I don't want to have to worry that before they put the wine in the bottle that they used it for, in a child sacrifice ritual. So therefore, I needed to have rabbinic supervision from the time the grapes are processed all the way through till the wine is bottled. Similarly, in a kosher restaurant, many kosher wines, you have to have a Jew uncork them, because if a non-Jewish waiter, for example, would uncork it, unless it's already boiled, then there's a fear that the waiter might take the wine, do a pagan ceremony with it, and then bring it back to you to drink.
What about the drinking of alcohol?
Alcohol, apparently the pagans didn't use it, hard liquor, for pagan rituals, so there was really no concern with that. Now, the pagans in Arizona apparently do use rum in child sacrifice rituals, and so you have to be extra careful here.
Okay.
All right, I'm glad you're laughing. Somebody's
I'm the only one.
gonna say the rabbi said the pagans in Arizona use rum in child sacrifice rituals.
Okay.
I'm gonna get a call from some reporter saying, "What is this?"
Remember, it's recorded.
We are being recorded.
So let me say for the record, this was a bad joke. It was an attempt at a joke.
Watch after we finish today, you'll have Steve just delete the whole thing.
No, I'm not allowed.
Oh.
Right, like President Nixon in the 18 minutes that were missing off the tape. There'll be 4 minutes missing off of this Torah study tape in the middle, and nobody will know why. Okay, back to you, Nan.
Nachmanides disagrees with Maimonides and offers a second reason for the rule against eating blood. Pointing to the Torah's statement that the soul of all life is in its blood, Nachmanides argues that while God permits human beings to eat the flesh of other creatures for nourishment and to use that blood of specific creatures for atonement, all blood is forbidden for eating because all souls belong to God. In other words, one must consider blood as sacred because it contains the soul given by God to all creatures. Having made the point that human beings are forbidden to eat blood because it is a sacred container of the soul, Nachmanides adds a curious observation out of the medieval medicine of the times. It is well known, he writes, that the food that one takes into the body becomes a part of the flesh. Therefore, if one eats the blood of a lower animal, the result would be a thickening and coarseness of the human soul. thus combining the human soul with the animal soul. Nachmanides believes that eating the blood of animals might have the effect of making a person more animal-like, of decreasing human sensitivity, intellect, and powers of understanding was common in his day. While modern science rejects such a view, there are many vegetarians who maintain that the eating of blood does have psychological significance. They refuse to eat meat, not only because they are opposed to slaughtering animals, but also because they believe that such slaughter has a brutalizing effect upon human beings.
Okay, and you can add the little box.
A vegetarian speaks. Early in my life, I came to the conclusion that there was no basic difference between man and animals. If a man has the heart to cut the throat of a chicken or a calf, there is no reason he should not be willing to cut the throat of a man. Isaac Bashevis Singer.
All right, raise your hands if you agree with this idea. Nobody?
The
What?
Dybbuk guy. You believe
Many
it?
people don't agree with Isaac Bashevis Singer.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm the only one that voted. One more time. How many people agree with him?
Oh,
How many
So,
people don't agree with him?
well, that's saying that all
Okay.
butchers are murderers or potential murderers of humans.
Yeah.
Well, if you're willing to kill a dog, why would you not be willing to kill a person?
Oh, we're also talking about cows and whatever other animals, sheep and whatever. So then that's why he's a vegetarian, speaking about not killing any animals for food.
Okay. Okay. So
Well,
what?
I have a question. If we take a plant and destroy it and eat it, not just the seed, but the plant itself, we are murdering the plant. And so why isn't there the same objection to using plants as well as animals?
Plants are presumably not sentient beings.
And they have no blood.
Right.
Yeah, but a dog, all you have to do is spend 10 minutes with a dog. You can see the dog. They know their own name. They have personalities. They have relationships. They're just like us, except they don't talk. So if, a dog is like us, but a piece of grass, if it's
That's not
like
what
us, it's not apparent.
that's not what he's saying. He's talking about people who slaughter animals for food because he's
Right,
talking
right.
about
I'm
as a
giving my
vegetarian.
own view here. Yeah. So go ahead, Marcia.
Yeah, I mean he's talking about food and getting food by killing an animal as opposed to a chicken or a calf is what he's talking about. So there's no chicken soup if we don't have this. So, you can't, I wouldn't equate it with being a potential murderer of a person.
Well, if I was looking for a side gig, I would be a dog groomer or an Uber driver or maybe a nightclub singer. But I'm not, I think being a shochet and cutting the heads off of chickens or cows would be pretty low down on my list of options.
I wouldn't do it either, but I don't fault the person. I assume that person would go out and kill a human.
No, okay.
yeah.
Okay. Pam and then Cy.
Yeah, but there are rabbis who work in meat processing
Right.
buildings
Mhm.
Yes. And
doing,
therefore,
hmm?
and therefore,
Hmm?
and
Well,
therefore,
they're actively getting into, you know, cutting
Water. Yeah.
yeah, cutting animals.
right.
So there's no rabbinical thing that says you can't do that.
Not 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 an Orthodox thing, but in the Reform, there's definitely a group within the Reform movement that favor vegetarianism. There's Richard Schwartz has written several books on Judaism and vegetarianism. And
So
I frankly, I sympathize very strongly with it. I mean, I like steak and I eat steak, but in theory, I I don't see why we shouldn't all eat tofu and eggs and cheese, and that should be plenty.
Hmm.
I mean, you could live on pizza, just pizza, you'd have enough.
Yeah.
You don't need steak, you don't need chicken, you don't need frog's legs.
But pure vegetarianism would not include eggs because that is an animal product. They would
Oh,
go.
that's
That's
veganism. Veganism,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
veganism is no animal products at all. Vegetarianism is just no animals.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
we're talking about the less strict one.
Mm.
Now, veganism, you go crazy. You can't eat butter.
I
You
know.
can't eat anything. I mean, the only things you could drink is like you can have fruit juice and blueberries, and that's about it. Cy and then Steve and then Marcia.
Not me.
Well, when you get back to the concept of the blood and the soul, you really have confusion because what happens when you go to war and you kill other men? Then they're losing their blood. Is this constantly losing their soul when Israel fights a war, or when Israelis get killed? Are they constantly losing their soul? I don't know. If you believe in this theory, it presents a great many problems.
Interesting. Um, Interesting. Anybody want to respond to Cy,
Yeah,
Marcia, and
so
then
what
Evan?
about these people who don't want to fight in the army? Is that their reasoning?
Well, it could be, I suppose, but
No, I mean
obviously
in the
there's a
Israeli
difference.
army. I'm
Well,
talking,
obviously there's a difference between defending your country and going out and murdering somebody, right? So, and that's why we translate the Ten Commandment, do not murder, not do not kill. Lo tirtzach, retzach is translated as murder. So if you're a soldier in an army, you're not murdering, you're defending your country or
Yeah,
attacking the other country. That's not considered murder, but it's definitely killing. So it's different,
yeah.
it's
Agree.
allowed. Yes, but then you could say, what about an offensive war? The Russians are fighting an offensive war against Ukraine, but Russia's not going to see it that way, of course. I mean, Six-Day War, the Israelis started it, but they started it because the Arabs were, gathering to attack them, so they did it first. Does that mean that's not allowed? But if you wait to be attacked, then it is. That doesn't make much sense. Evelyn,
I think, in spite of the fact that people do kill, when you see soldiers coming back from war being adversely affected by it, having this post-traumatic symptoms, that in spite of the fact that they were forced to kill, they innately perhaps did not want to. I think there are very few people who kill indiscriminately in war and take great joy in it. I think most of them don't even want to remember the horrors of what they saw and what they did. And many come back deeply, badly affected by the result of this. And I think innately man does not want to kill other men, but they, under circumstances, because of the country's desire to either conquer or save itself, they're forced to. And so these are the final effects of what happens when man kills other man.
but still, post-traumatic stress or not, for a soldier to kill somebody is different than for a civilian to murder someone. If I
Right.
go next door and I break into my neighbor's house and I just shoot them all, that's murder. If I join the Israeli army and I attack Hamas and I kill the same number of people, it's not the same thing. It may affect the person very negatively, but it's not the same thing. You agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, does it matter if you kill somebody without blood or with blood? So does spilling blood, is that a significant thing when we talk about spilling blood, meaning killing somebody? But is that just a symbolic thing? If I poison somebody and they go to sleep and die, is that better than stabbing them 50 times where there's blood all over? Does that make any difference?
Dead is dead. You've killed them.
Yeah, but the theme today is blood. The theme today is blood. So we're not talking today about kosher. We're not talking today about killing. We're talking about blood. What is it about blood? Does blood have any special significance to us or not? Marcia.
All right, we speak of blood being a life force. I wouldn't say it's the soul, but I can imagine it being called a life force because without it, there is no life, right? So, right?
Right.
So does it matter if you knife someone 50 times and there's blood all over, or if you slip them some arsenic?
It's still murder.
Say again?
It's still murder.
So to you, the spilling of blood literally makes no difference.
Not in that case, no. If I was on a jury and I had to say whether, make a choice, I would not differentiate there.
Okay, Pam?
Open.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Pam.
When we put criminals and they get the death penalty, at least in the United States, we always do it in a way that is not, what's the word I want to use?
You don't spill blood. You don't spill
Inhumane.
the blood. Yeah.
What'd you say, Steve?
Inhumane.
Yes, I was thinking of the word and you popped it right up for me. Thank you. Yes. And I think there's a reason we do that because we see a difference between punishing somebody by that, but also by the way we do it.
So that's why we don't do a firing squad.
Yeah.
So you have these 10 soldiers all shooting at this one person. They're gonna, knock his head off and, knock his chest out. There's gonna be a lot of blood. But if you put him to sleep with drugs, then it seems much more civilized.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Nan, back to you. Nechama Leibovitz was a very famous Torah studies teacher in Jerusalem.
According to Nahama Leibowitz, Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cook, the famed chief rabbi of the land of Israel just before the establishment of the Jewish state, held such a view. He taught that the eating of meat was a temporary disposition given to humanity, which has not yet reached the stage of overcoming its murderous instincts. For Rabbi Cook, eating meat or blood was a sign of human cruelty, proof that human beings were still primitive. Commenting on Cook's view, Leibovitz writes that the rabbi believed human beings must slowly be trained to show mercy to their own kind and ultimately to the rest of the animal creation. Refusing to eat blood or meat was a means of furthering such an education in sensitivity and reverence for life. Rabbi Cook's view, as presented by Nahama Leibowitz, is close to the opinion of Rabbi Samuel H. Dresner and Seymour Siegel in their discussion in the Jewish Dietary Laws Burning Bush Press.
This is a very famous book on kosher written by the two conservative rabbis and published right before the 1960s. This is the time when conservative synagogues were growing tremendously and they were trying to get conservative Jews to follow the kosher laws. It was
Com-
distributed very widely. It was one of the most popular books. Whether it had any impact on people, I don't know.
Commentating on the prohibition against eating blood, they wrote, "There is no clearer visible symbol of life than blood. To spill blood is to bring death. To inject blood is often to save life. The removal of blood, kashrut, the laws of slaughtering animals for food, teaches it teaches is one of the most powerful means of making us constantly aware of the concession and compromise that the whole act of eating meat in reality is. Again, it teaches its reverence for life. The Torah's rule against eating blood because it contains the sacred essence of life, the soul, demonstrates the high value Jewish tradition places upon the human and animal life. When blood is spilled, either at the altar as part of the ritual of atonement or in the process of slaughtering for food, the blood is gathered and buried. It is treated with respect. Through such practices, human beings were to learn that blood is synonymous with life, and life, like blood, is sacred. Oh, Rabbi's on the phone.
He's on the phone. I believe that kind of concludes our reading. Any other comments? Go ahead,
I wanted to ask the rabbi.
Go ahead, Rabbi or Marcia.
This last thing that we read, it says that the blood is where they do ritual slaughter, they bury the blood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
that was stated at the beginning.
Right.
I didn't.
In the beginning of this reading, it said that when you slaughter it, the first blood that comes when you slit the throat should go on dirt, and then you bury that, and then you turn the.
Went over my head. Yeah.
Okay.
I never heard that. Yeah. Yeah.
But when I was young and we had a summer house in Candlewood Lake in Connecticut, and my parents and I would go out fishing and we catch these fish, like dozens of them, and we'd let them flop around at the bottom of the boat, and then we'd take them home, and my father would cut off their heads and with these gloves and these scissors. And when I look back upon it, I think it was a horrible thing. But at the time, nobody seemed to have any second thought. And my parents were decent people. They were not mass murderers or even like individual murderers, but they killed all those fish in the most horrible way without a single pang of conscience. It was a different era. Marcia.
One time I went with my mother to a place where they were ritual, I don't know, kosher killing chicken. And they chop their heads off and they're running around, and it's that is not kind, you know. That's not humane. And yet this is the Jewish ritual of how to kill a chicken.
What can I say? Rich.
I have a little something about blood being life-giving to the extent that it's food. I spent a little time in Africa for medicine purposes, and the Maasai tribe, which is in Kenya and Tanzania, use blood as food. What they do is they will pierce the cow's neck where the vein is and draw blood out, a certain amount of blood. Not enough to kill the animal, not enough to make the animal very weak, but enough for them to use and curdle with milk. And that's a main meal for them. And for them, blood is life-giving, and the animals live and they prosper, and eventually, when an animal gets older, it will be slaughtered, but otherwise it'll stick around for a while and give blood to the tribe. It's a different process, a different view. No comments, huh?
Stunned, you might say. Well, when you
eating that stuff makes me not feel so, but that's ritual for them. That's their food.
Well, the Christian butchers will make blood sausage, which is the blood of the pig mixed with whatever other scraps there are. And so they utilize, as they say, they use everything but the oink in a pig. And that, there nothing is left, everything is consumed as such, including the blood.
Well,
Um,
they
it-
use, what about tripe? Well, that the Jewish people made, my mother made us tripe soup, which is like menudo, which is vile tasting to me.
yeah, the pancreas. It
Yeah.
was, yeah. Those are the organs, and again, they utilized all the organs.
Brains. They
Yeah.
look the brains up.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
it's not just a Christian thing.
Those had brain cow disease, and people were coming down with a brain disease, and then they stopped eating the brain. Mad cow.
Oh, right,
Mhm.
mad cow disease, right, Richard? You remember that? And for a while, people thought that they might have to stop eating steak entirely.
Right, right. Huh.
Well, they've come up with the fake meat these days, a vegetarian product that presumably has all of the amino acids and so is considered a complete protein. If they can devise a way of having palatable food manufactured so that it is a substitute for animal protein, at some point it may actually take over and be much more practical than using cows that take up a lot of land, and so who
And
knows?
emit a lot of methane or ethane gas.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
They did that, and I tried actually some of their meat. It was more expensive, and it was okay. Um, I tried not to think of it as not being meat because it did taste a little different than the meat, but it was good. But it hasn't really taken off. Just a very small portion of the population, at least in the United States, is eating it. And what thought would be something really big is not true because people are stuck on meat and chicken.
Well, I never want to see it in a restaurant.
No.
If you ever drive up,
It is in restaurants, though.
Oh, it is a restaurant. I've had a hamburger.
Yeah.
And I have at home here, I have some chicken. It's a soy protein chicken substitute that's breaded that I eat occasionally. I get from Aldi's, and it's really quite good. Put it in a sandwich, and put a sliced tomato on there and some lettuce, little mustard. It's good.
put enough on it, it doesn't matter anymore.
Good, and it's just protein. It's soy protein from Illinois.
But I think though I think the prices though of that would have to come down because it's costly to make it. And then there are some issues with using soy in that for women because I know my daughter was told by her doctor she has to limit the amount of soy, that it's not good because of estrogen problems that it could cause. So I mean,
Always something.
you have to everything in moderation. I know my ex-husband would have tried anything and he was game. I mean, when we traveled, he ate bison, he ate kangaroo in Australia. I mean, he would try anything just to experience it. But some of that stuff really, is not too terrific.
All I can say is that we should limit our consumption of red meat, but you can eat unlimited amounts of ice cream without fear of coming into contact with
Especially if it's
I'm in favor of that.
And
chocolate.
dark chocolate ice cream is the safest food to avoid any contact with blood of any kind. I want to, before I turn it back to Steve, I'm going to give a pitch. We have in April 2 courses that you might want to take. One is on anti-Semitism, and the other is a course I'm doing with a Christian clergy on the four Gospels and Rabbinic Judaism. They both are going to be very interesting. The Four Gospels course is more textual, more technical, and the anti-Semitism, of course, is broader and more contemporary issue-y. And that's my announcement. Does anybody else have any announcements? Nan? We have a Nan. We started a Saturday morning service.
I heard it went very well.
It went very well. We sacrificed a goat.
No?
And so if you see some blood stains on the carpet in the sanctuary, please don't get upset.
We have
And
2 more scheduled, one in April and one in May. And I'm planning to attend both of those. And if it goes well, we'll take a break over the summer, but coming back in September, we'll do it again, and hopefully we'll be able to have good turnout.
okay, back to you, Steve.
Well,
We're on.
I was going to mention a couple of things too that are happening at the temple. Is the women's seder? I believe it's on the
15th.
15th. It's open to the entire congregation if they wanted to make a reservation. I know some of the Brotherhood are helping to serve, and then also too, then I believe on the 22nd is the community seder at the temple, catered by Chompies.
Yeah, and the reservations must be
Must be
in and paid
paid.
for by the 17th,
Yes,
and there will be no refunds after
Right.
that date should you cancel. So,
and
because we have a limit, we have to
Right.
give them an exact count.
right, okay.
When is the women's? I think I'm helping with it. It's the 15th is Monday, right?
15th
Right.
is a Monday, yes.
It's at noon.
Yes,
The Seder is at noon, but we need to.
Because we have an anti-Semitism, the TBS anti-Semitism course is at 10 o'clock that day. So then after
just
that,
stay,
I'll help you people. I'll stay.
just stay at 11 o'clock.
Help the ladies.
Yep.
By the way, that Saturday sacrifice the goat, it was okay because it was a kosher goat. It was circumcised.
I see.
Hey. Can't have a kosher goat, you know.
No. Let's conclude then with the final blessing, and then we can go on the rest of our day.
All right, thank you.
Baruch
Atah
atah
Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'haye olam nata b'tochenu, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah. Blessed is Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us a teaching of truth, implanting within us eternal life. Blessed is Adonai, giver of the Torah.
Okay, everyone, have a good rest of the week.
See you
And
Friday night.
Evelyn. Yeah.
Happy birthday tomorrow, Evelyn.
Thank you.
bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Rabbi,
Bye.
do you wait 1 minute? I have a question.
For me, for who?
Yes, for you.
Yes.
Rabbi or me?
Either one of you. Do
Okay.
you know if Bernie's okay? He hasn't been.
He said he wanted to take some time off.
Oh, but it's not a health
He's
thing like
not
that.
healthy. It's not a health issue. The
Okay.
way he explained it to me.
Okay,
So that was
thank you. I
his
just wanted to know.
situation.
Okay, thanks a lot. Have a good week.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks,
Rabbi,
Steve.
I'll let you know as soon as I find out when I will be back.
Good.
I anticipate being back on Tuesday, but I don't know for sure
But
when.
if you can find the information anyway, send it to me and I'll hold
Of
on
course.
to it in
Of
case.
course. All right. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you and my condolences.
Well, it hasn't happened yet, but it's close. Take care.